Hi, and welcome to another Dolphin Financial Radio Show. My name's Dan Wendell. Today's topic is going to be covering two things. One, we got inflation, which is hot on everyone's mind. Top of mind inflation. Oh, it sounds terrible, but let's add to it taxes. How do taxes go up during inflation? Now, before you leave the show and turn off the radio or turn off the YouTube channel, let me bring in Tony Shore, my co-host, because Tony, I know we're talking about two ridiculous topics here of people just don't like to talk about inflation and how it increases taxes. It's a double whammy.
Wait, inflation affects taxes?
Yes, your taxes go up in inflationary
Oh,
scenarios.
Dan, come on, man. Hitting me with the bad news already. I'm already just struggling with dealing with the rising costs of inflation. I mean, you can't get a home project like remodeling. We wanted our house painted, fence put in, trees taken out. It's like twice the quote we got a year ago or 2 years ago in 2019. Since then, prices have gone up astronomically. I mean, look at gas. I mean, in California, they're with all the taxes out there, they're paying. I saw some pictures, and I double checked to make sure it wasn't fake internet news, but they're paying over five to $8 a gallon in LA for
Isn't it in
gas.
liters over there? Little mini
In
Europe, you
California.
know. Yeah, I'm going there in a couple of months to go
Oh
visit some
no.
friends. Um, I did a show last week with Chris. You weren't invited because we were talking about medical inflation. That was a mercy play because you know how I can rant about medical inflation. So we talked about how
Uh-huh.
Medicare costs are going up. One thing I want viewers to watch that show. One of the reasons why Medicare premiums are going up, Tony, not only because of inflation, but because they're considering adding Alzheimer drugs to the prescription drug list. So those
That'll
are
be good.
expensive. So I thought you'd like to know that because
Yeah.
we've talked
Yeah.
about that before. So today we're going to talk about how taxes go up as a result of inflation. So we know inflation's here. Your pizza buffet has gone up double digits now for free all you can eat pizza.
A
Not
pizza
free, all you
buffet.
can eat pizza. Yeah, you're paying
Yeah.
more than $8 now.
Most of the
So
buffets are still closed because of
true.
COVID, but the ones that are open charge a premium. So I am losing weight. So this is good.
This is good. But now you're going to lose weight even more because the loose change in your pocket's going to be gone because this guy behind me, for the viewers on YouTube,
Oh, behind you. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see him there.
he wants your taxes. Yeah,
Uncle
Uncle
Sam.
Sam.
Hey, Uncle Sam. You know, Uncle Sam is the like the drunkle Sam, I call him, because he spends like he
Yeah,
spends
drunken
like he's
sailor, right?
on a binge, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Dan, here's the problem here. I don't think he's my real uncle. I mean, that's
No, he
no.
might be. He might be.
He might
It
be. You
depends.
see the similarity, the cheek,
It
the
depends how
bone
much money you
structure.
make. He'll be your favorite You'll
That's
be his
true.
favorite nephew if you make just the right amount. With all the spending, you're right. Inflation's not going anywhere, right?
No,
It
no,
might be a
it's
short-term
not.
blip. That might still be a reality. It might
Yeah.
be a short-term blip, but here's what happens when we have inflation, okay?
Hmm.
When it comes to taxes, because that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
A
Taxes.
lot of the tax laws and the tax code that the IRS is overseeing are inflation adjusted. So as you as costs go up, they adjust the tax tables. So if you make above 80,000 as a couple, you get moved to the next bracket. Now it's 82,000 or something like that, right? So they raise that based on inflation. They also raise the deduction, how much you can deduct. The standard deduction changes. How much you could contribute to your retirement plans change, right? The limits go up because they realize, you know, the dollar a year ago isn't the same as a dollar today.
Sure.
So they do that, and that's supposed to prevent your taxes from going up percentage wise due to inflation. Because if you think about it, if we never change the tax brackets and we go back to the 1940s when you were in college, um, we would have like probably if you make over $12,000, you'd be at the top tax bracket, right?
Wow.
A
Yeah.
$50,000 salary would be paying 92% tax or something crazy, right? So
Yikes. Yeah.
so we adjust things, and the IRS does that. The tax code is adjusted, although some are not. Some of the taxes are not inflation adjusted, and we're going to talk about those. We call this bracket creep.
Hmm. See, this is a new area for me. I'll be honest. I'm not familiar with that term, bracket creep.
It's basically, due to no benefit of your own. Let's take you for example. You're adding no additional value this year as you opposed to next year, right? That's
Nothing but
understood.
noise.
Nothing but
Nothing but noise. We've heard from the listeners. We've heard from the listeners. Oh,
nothing but noise, right?
He doesn't understand. We had a listener say, "What is Tony at?" And it's like nothing but noise. And I'm here to say he's getting the concept of the show. You're the host. You provide the content, and I'm here obviously good looks and charm, because I'm here to fill in the areas where Dan is lacking. I don't understand why people don't understand that. You've got to, if you're going to stare at Dan, you got to have somebody. I mean, come on.
See, there it is.
This doesn't just happen.
See how he's adding value right now to this conversation.
Oh, I'm adding.
That's pretty funny. So nothing but noise, Tony.
Yeah,
your salary has not changed, right? But let's say it does. Let's say we give you the cost of living increase of 5.9, like Social Security, right?
Okay, I'll take it.
You, for doing nothing different, right? Your job stays the same. You're getting an increase just to keep up so you could pay for the pizza buffets.
Sure. You were right on the doing nothing part. You were correct.
Right. So if I keep saying it, it'll sink in. So your tax bracket, if the tax bracket didn't change, then you might get bumped into a new tax bracket for doing nothing but living and keeping up with costs. So that's called bracket creep.
Yeah, that's not good.
But you're not a creep, Tony. You're a good guy. So
I hope so.
Let's talk about which parts of the tax code don't change with inflation. Social Security. All right. So Social Security got a 5.9% COLA, cost of living adjustment. We did a show on that.
So they do adjust Social Security itself to help with inflation.
Right. But how much of your Social Security is taxed hasn't changed.
Doesn't change,
so
yeah.
People hate to hear that Social Security is taxed.
It shouldn't be because you pay. Yeah, it shouldn't be taxed.
Double tax, so on and so forth. But
yes,
it is taxed. Social Security is taxed, and
it's crazy.
And as a married couple, if your income, which includes half of your Social Security, if your income total for the family is less than $32,000, then your Social Security is not taxed. As soon as you get above $32,000, then up to half of it's taxed, and then once you get above $44,000 as a couple, 85% of it's taxed, up to 85, okay? So at some point, your income might fall in this threshold, and you're going to be paying taxes on your Social Security income. That bracket, 32,000 to 44,000, hasn't changed since I've been doing this. So wages are going up, Social Security is going up, and just by default and inflation, more and more people are finding that their Social Security is now taxable. Because 32,000 10 years ago may have been enough for you to live on, but now 32,000 is not enough, so you're taking more. You have more income just from COLA on your Social Security alone. So this is impacting people, and this is an example of how during inflationary periods, cost of living increases to a pension or Social Security can actually put you in a higher tax bracket. Social Security is a prime example of it.
Wow. So, and Social Security, correct me if I'm wrong, can be taxed up to 85% in some cases and in some states, correct?
Right. It's a federal tax, so Social Security is taxed up to 85%. So 15% currently 15% is non-taxed. So that's why I do like Social Security, because even a billionaire getting Social Security wouldn't pay tax on 15% of that Social Security income.
So, but one more question before you go on. I don't mean to interrupt, but on a state tax level, some states do not tax Social Security. Like I know, let's say, for example, I don't think Oregon doesn't tax Social Security, but some states also tax Social Security, correct?
Yes. So that's you're jumping ahead, but you're on point
Oh,
today,
sorry.
Tony. Ate his Wheaties. No, this is good because that's another thing that doesn't necessarily get adjusted. Some state, like in Florida, we don't worry about it. Yay, Florida, right? So in Florida, we don't have to worry about state taxes.
Yeah.
But if your state doesn't change their tax brackets to increase them with inflation, you might find you're paying more in state taxes, relatively speaking, because of inflation. So yes, you're right, but you're hopefully in a state like Florida that doesn't tax your Social Security income or other income.
Nope. I'm not so lucky.
No, you're not. Okay, so yeah, Social Security is a biggie, and this is really important to note because people on Social Security really can't do anything about it, right? You can't say, "Oh no, don't hold back the Social Security. I want to stay below the limit." So, okay, net investment income tax. This is relatively new. Obama passed this in 2013, and this is a tax on investment income, certain income. It's a 3.8% tax on income, but only if you're above a certain limit, right? And that's 200,000 for a single person, or 250,000 for a married couple.
Okay.
So, okay, big deal. If you make it 250,000 as a married couple, you should be paying extra, right? But here's where it gets interesting. That hasn't changed since 2013. So the 250 hasn't changed for a married couple. So if you're an earner and you're all of a sudden getting raises and you have dual income, say you're in New York, and a teacher can make 100,000 a year, right? So you have two teachers in the family, and all of a sudden you're facing this 3.8% extra tax, where you didn't before, just based on inflation. So this is another example of a tax that you could fall victim to through really no fault of your own. So this is a tax that they haven't adjusted for inflation, just like Social Security. So there are a few of these. Here's another one, Tony. We've done a show on selling your home, right?
Yep.
If you want to know more about this, watch that show. So we talked about how when you sell your primary home, you don't pay taxes on the gain if it's your first home, primary home, I should say, and you haven't, there's rules. So if you're interested, what if I get a second home and move there and so forth, there are ways to capitalize on this. It's not just one time, it's every time you sell your primary residence. So the limit is $500,000 for a married couple, which when it was made in 1997 was quite a lot. There weren't too many homes with $500,000 of equity growth, capital gains. So you might buy a house for $100,000, but your odds of selling it for more than $600,000 with a more than $500,000 gain were low. Not anymore, as we've seen with home prices going skyrocketing due to just appreciation, inflation, whatever you want to call it. So we made that $500,000 limit for a married couple, $250,000 for a single person in 97, and that hasn't changed at all.
Wow. Okay. So that's another area where it's not adjusted for inflation, so it kind of creeps up on you.
Right. So I guess, I don't know, because I'm not a tax expert. I'm not sitting here analyzing tax policy. I'm a CFP, and I know how taxes impact retirement and income and finances. But when they made this rule, like the others, did they make it saying, all right, 500,000 is perfect, everyone's happy, it's high, and we know that 20 years from now, or in this case, 24 years from now, home price is going to be so much higher that eventually the government's going to have some tax revenue from this. This isn't going to be some sort of you never pay tax on the sale of your home. Think about it. 20 years from now, 500,000 might be a starter home. Think about people in California.
That's true. Oh, yeah.
What can you get for 500,000 in LA?
Nothing.
A garage space, storage
Yep.
unit. Like, I mean, and I've watched that Storage Wars. I think they're here in
Oh
California,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Right? So
storage
you can
wars are
rent one of
great.
those for
Yeah.
500,000, put a bed in
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
But in reality,
They
it's true.
frown
Like,
upon it. I've tried it. They frown upon it. A lot of radio show co-hosts are trying it out there, but
right, right. They kind of move you along, move along. They kind of sweep you out,
I'm
clean it out every month. So
yeah.
can you imagine they do the, let's open up this one. They cut the lock, and then you're sitting there in the chair reading a book. Like, what? Hey, am I behind on payment? So,
That's
think
funny.
about that. States like California that have ridiculously priced, and I say ridiculously because it's comparable.
Mm.
You might be you're in Minnesota, so you might say, well, 500,000 still gets you a pretty decent sized house, right?
Oh yeah.
But in California, it's not the case. So these
Right.
types of things are disproportionately affecting those
In your
that have.
in your neighborhood, for example, Dan, it wouldn't even buy a garage. I mean, you probably spent more than that on
yeah,
your
right.
pool, right?
How would you know? We don't let your kind in here. They'll take a look. I guess you
That's
can
true.
look.
I can't
the
make
drones.
it past your gated community.
Yeah,
right.
Gated community. Yeah. But you're right. Like a nice community, you can have a $500,000 gain, especially when the prices of a house in like a year go up 20%. Right. So this is another example of how taxes can increase based on inflation. And this is not necessarily inflation, it's appreciation. But I think inflation impacts home prices because the costs to build a home, like you said, and renovate, to put a new kitchen in, might be 50,000 where it was 30,000 just a few years ago. So that 50,000 increases the value of the home and the sale and so forth.
Well, and what concerns me about this one, Dan, is that so many of our listeners out there might be retirees or thinking about retirement, and so much of when we talk about home sales, we're talking about downsizing. Like my wife and I, we're both in our 50s. We're thinking about downsizing now that the kids are, once our youngest graduates high school. We'd like a one-level home, no stairs, right? And so we look at these things, but this is another area that affects retirees in particular, or people who are downsizing, right?
Or in particular, people who bought their house in the 60s or the 70s and are now
Right.
selling, and they've lived
Yep.
there their whole life. They've
Yeah.
put money into it over the years, but not.
Yep.
It hasn't been as much as it's grown. So they could
Right.
really, truly be facing a large gain. Now, what happens when if you lose a spouse? We talk about that in that show.
Yeah.
Now, instead of 500,000, you're down to 250. So it could really impact people. And you're
Yeah.
right. It does affect those that have been in their house and have major appreciation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I have been in this house 23 years already. So,
Right. And that
Yeah.
flew by, right? And I'm sure it's worth a
flies.
lot more than
Well-
you paid.
well, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And time flies when you're having fun, Dan. And I prefer to think of it. The reason time is moving so fast for me now is because I'm having so much fun, not because I'm getting older.
Well, you do the show every week, so there's like the Dolphin Financial Radio a week keeps the doctor away. No, that doesn't
Mhm.
rhyme.
Yeah.
Listening to the Dolphin Financial Radio a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah, I'll be headed to the ER immediately after the show.
Okay, then watch the last show we just did on medical inflation because you're going to get hit
that's
with
a
a
good
huge
one.
bill.
Yes.
You might have to sell your home, pay the taxes to pay the doctor bill.
Oh, yeah.
So, last one I want to talk about is salt. Put some salt on the wound.
Oh boy.
Now, this has been a discussion in the news. Congress is trying to adjust this because in 2018, this came into business. They set a limit on the amount of state and local tax deduction you can write off. So, in other words,
Yeah.
all right, I live in Pennsylvania. I pay state tax, and then I live in Philadelphia, so I pay city tax, right?
Yep.
And,
Yep.
I pay $18,000 in taxes because I live in a large house or whatever, like something like that, okay?
Mhm.
You used to be able to write off your state and local taxes off your federal tax bill. Okay, so I paid 18 to Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, so I can write that off. And I don't have to pay that. I don't have to pay federal tax on that. The government in 2018 limited that to 10,000.
Mm.
So you might have had 18,000 of state and local taxes, but you could only write off 10. So that other 8,000 is taxable at a federal level. So you don't get that deduction.
Ah, I see.
So who, again, gets hit disproportionately in this case is going to be those with huge tax bills at a state and local level.
Yeah.
California, New
Yep.
York, places,
Minnesota.
so places that have
Ours is really
high
big here.
local and state taxes.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact Floridians as much because we don't have state tax. So again,
But you have
this,
other things that are costly taxes.
of course, but
property
this,
taxes.
you used to be able to write off a lot of this,
Yeah.
and now they
Yeah.
can't, or they can
That's
only
not
write
good.
off 10,000. And what's interesting, just like the others that we talked about, that 10,000 limit has been set in 2018 and hasn't changed, so it's not inflation adjusted.
It
It's
should
always
go up
been
at least
10,000.
7%. They should raise it 7% at least. At the
Again,
least.
this is it. This is the discussion that we're
For
having. It's
inflation.
like Social Security, net investment income tax, home sale exemption, SALT. These things are not pegged to inflation. So, and that could easily be by design. I'm not putting it past the tax code writers to say, hey, let's put it here so that down the road, we're going to get more and more tax revenue based simply on inflation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, that's not good. And I'm glad you brought that one up. I mean, state and local tax, that's a biggie for a lot of folks. So, well, all these are great. And I think this was a great topic. And by the way, I sometimes tease you on the backgrounds you pick for the shows, but this is a perfect one. Yeah, that scares me. And it should scare you because he's taking the tax. Yep, exactly.
Coming for you. It's coming
Yeah.
for you, Tony.
He
And
is.
you
He
see
doesn't
this.
look happy. He does
A
not
lot of
look
these-
happy.
A lot of these are, we have inflation increases going for goods and services, which impacts everybody, but it disproportionately impacts the lower earners because, the people with a lot of means, they can afford to pay more for groceries, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully wages keep up, which we don't have wage going up as much as inflation, but these other things also, you could say, disproportionately if impact those that have higher investments, higher, because the investment income or the home sale appreciation. But SALT, I mean, it used to be 10,000. If you were paying 10,000 in state and local taxes, you were rich. But in a lot of cases, that's not the case anymore. So it is impacting more and more people. It's not just one economic class versus the other. So you can't ignore this anymore.
Yeah.
But maybe the lesson here is this was by design. So you have to add this to your retirement income plan. You have to factor in these taxes. You can't just, ignore it because it could very well impact you now.
And how can our listeners out there get a plan in place to help deal with things like inflation, like taxes, and minimize their tax burden? They just need to pick up the phone and give you a call, correct?
Yeah, and a lot of people have financial planners or they have someone helping them with their investments, but inflation's a tough one. You got to make sure that if you have some sort of plan in place, that you're factoring in inflation. You have to include the tax implications of different things. There's way too many people that come to me and said, look, this is what I did. And I say, oh, man, did you think about the taxes on that move? It's too late now.
Right.
But, so those that don't have a plan, yes, they can contact us and figure it out. But those that even have a plan, take a look and see if it's inflation and taxes are being factored in, because sometimes they're neglected. So that's the point of the show.
Yeah.
So Dolphin Financial Group, we do that. We're comprehensive, so we always include that, which is why we're talking about it today, Tony. I don't like taxes. I pay taxes. My mom used to work for the IRS in the audit department.
That's right.
So,
she had that guy over her shoulder.
She
too,
had, right.
Yeah.
So,
oh, what's
I'm
that
not-
number? Give the number, Dan. Let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you.
DolphinFinancialGroup.com, or you can call the 800 number. And when you call the 800 number, it's 888-508-5935. If you hit extension 5, that gets to Tony and I, the radio show. So you could leave a voicemail indicating your disdain for Tony's attitude, or hopefully you could call up and leave your comments and say, I really like Tony, because I get that. I get people calling me and say, hey, can I speak to Tony? I say, no, Tony's busy. He's a celebrity. You gotta go through me.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Tony, thanks for a good show. Remember, everyone, I don't work for Social Security. I don't work for the IRS. We're going to bring the kids in there to talk about that. But have a good day, Tony. Thank you.
Thanks.
All matters discussed in today's show are for informational purposes only.
This show is not investment advice.
Dan Wendol nor Dolphin Financial Group are affiliated or endorsed by any government agency.
Investment advisory services are offered through Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc., a registered investment advisor in the state of Florida.
Insurance products and services are offered through Dolphin Insurance, Inc.
Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc. and Dolphin Insurance, Inc. are affiliated companies doing businesses as Dolphin Financial Group.
You should talk to someone at Dolphin Financial Group before implementing any of these strategies or ideas.